I'm Derrick Day, and he is.
I am Aaron Tomlinson, relaxing in my recliner and ready to talk about deconstructing grace.
Nice, nice. And it looks like, Aaron, it looks like
Yep.
it's not working.
No, it's on
Oh,
there.
here it is. Actually, it is working.
Yep.
All right.
I don't know
So,
why it wasn't working last week. That's so weird. That's a Doug Wentz thing. Sorry,
it
Doug.
was,
I've
yeah.
had problems before. Not that Doug does anything. I'm just saying, whenever he goes to speak, like I've had technical difficulties with him before, but nothing that he does. I don't mean it like
No,
that.
it's the supernatural power that Doug carries.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh man, I got to give a shout out real quick. Graciela Campa Perez.
Hmm.
She's a former member of our church back in Phoenix, but
Cool.
I got to give her a shout out because a lot of why I am where I am, I owe to her husband and Frank,
Oh,
or
wow.
her husband Frank and her,
Wow.
because they were way ahead of me spiritually. But for some reason they stuck it out with me. They have faith in me. They believed in me,
That's great.
and I appreciate their friendship and all that they've contributed to my life. So I just wanted to give her a shout out when I saw her in here. So, but um, but yeah, man. You want to before we go to the topic, what's in the glass? That's the important thing. Let's
Yeah.
important shit first.
I'm just drinking Merlot again tonight, so just sticking with the wine.
Well, I'm doing something that's it's the equivalent of a Moscow Mule, which is basically, ginger beer, lime juice, and some alcohol. In a Moscow Mule would be vodka, but in
Right.
this case, I'm using Bullet Bourbon.
All right.
So we have to come up with a catchy name for it. It's some kind of donkey for sure. It's not a mule, but it's some kind of donkey because it's from Kentucky. We'll figure it out.
That'll work. Probably not Moscow either. Probably maybe a Kentucky donkey.
Well, unless it's Moscow Mitch, you know, because he's from Kentucky. You got to play connect the dots with this.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you want to tee up the topic, or you want me to tee it up? How do you want to do that
I'll let
tonight?
you tee it up because you picked it. So I'll let you tee it up, and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
Well, we've been talking about deconstruction for the last few weeks. Last week we had Doug Wentz on, and he helped unpack some things in a really huge way. Um, our tagline is like growing in real time, and we all grew in real time in last week's
Yes.
show. Doug is amazing. But there's so many people that are in the process of deconstruction, and I've realized this is a blind spot on my part, is that everybody doesn't move along at the same speed, right? So one of the problems that I've always had in life is that I'll see something clearly, conceptually,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or in my mind, I see it clearly. And when other people don't get it, I get frustrated, right?
Right.
And that has been the case with every human being except my kids. For some reason, I'm able to extend some grace
Yeah.
to my kids that I haven't been able to extend to others. But the thing is that in order to deconstruct, you have to look at some key components of any ideology, of any theology, and you have to say, okay, let's take this as a concept or as a paradigm,
Mhm.
and let's strip back the layers of it. Let's reverse engineer it and see if this makes sense. And so that being said, tonight I want to talk about grace. And I want to talk about grace on two prongs, Aaron, because the easy one, the low hanging fruit, is to talk about grace in the spiritual movement, the Christian grace movement,
Mhm.
right? And there are a lot of things to say about that are some are actually good and some not so good. And I'm going to really harp on the things that are not so good. But there's also a concept of grace in what you call the secular realm,
Okay.
right? And I think that grace in both the religious sphere and the secular sphere is horribly misunderstood and horribly misapplied. And
Mhm.
and so I want to set up the conversation by talking about grace what does it really mean?
Mhm.
What does it mean in the paradigm of faith, in the paradigm of free thinking or atheism, grace in the concept of just regular day to day living.
Mhm.
So that's my setup, Aaron. So I'm gonna kick it over to you.
Okay. Obviously, and I don't know why I've been kind of froggy today,
Oh, me too, man.
but grace, obviously, in my context, relates to my religious background, um, and what it means to be a grace preacher, grace movement. For those that aren't as familiar with that context, it's this idea that our works don't matter. our It's all set up around this judicial sort of framework, all of it. I always cracked up at grace preachers who argued against legalism because their argument is still based on legalism. It's the foundation of both arguments. So basically, the idea is that God, much like a human government or a human king or judge or whatever, has has a system of laws. Sorry, wow.
The kingdom of God.
Yeah, where he demands adherence to these laws, and the idea is this is the best way for humanity to coexist. Only they take it one step further. It isn't just about ethics. So for me, a lot of what we call morality is about ethics. It's about ethos. It's
Mhm.
about how do I treat other people in my life? What is owed to others? And how do we live peacefully and effectively in community with one another? This isn't about that. This is about universal laws that are consistent with who they say that God is. And of course, they dive into the Old Testament. What is there? Something like 600 and
613.
thank you. I was going to say 616, but I knew that wasn't right. 613 laws that Israel was required to live under. And that's the highest standard. That's the highest standard. So then the question becomes, how does God relate to the law? So for the what we would used to call the legalist, this might relate to like Seventh Day Adventism, the old Worldwide Church of God, Pentecostal holiness, other types and expressions of Christianity. God holds you to those standards, and of course, the idea is that it's impossible to live up to those standards as human beings. And so then how does God deal with the fact that you broke the law? So if you broke the law under this system, in order for God to be just, there has to be punishment.
Right.
So then the question becomes, am I punished by God for breaking the laws? And then we take another leap of logic in these circles that says if you violate one law of God, that the just punishment for you is eternal damnation. And the way they do this is they say, well, you violated an eternal principle, you sinned against an eternal God, therefore it's just for God to punish you for all eternity. But of course, nobody, like what kind of gospel message is that, right? So then we have to come up with the end around. So what's the end around? So the end around for grace people becomes God doesn't hold you individually accountable for keeping every law in the Old Testament. What God holds you accountable for is what you do with the message of Jesus, because Jesus came and died in your place. He died in your stead. God took all of the anger and wrath and justice that was necessary for all of us that broke all of the laws and caused Jesus to live Jesus lived this perfect life. He never broke a single commandment, even though we have in the New Testament, Derrick, we have in the Gospels where Jesus did break commandments that were in the Old Testament, but we gloss over that. And then we say he lived this perfect life. So then God does this transference. He transfers all of your guilt onto Jesus, and crucifies him and kills him for 3 days. And then he takes Jesus' righteousness, his right standing, and God transfers that to you. So what you're held accountable for is whether or not you believe in the message, at least as it's framed in the grace movement, that Jesus died for your sins. And if you believe that, then there's this transference that happens. Your conduct and the punishment due you for your sins is transferred onto Jesus, and his conduct of perfect righteousness is transferred over to you, and we call that grace.
Yep. And that pretty much sizes it up. There's an old thing, and I'm pretty sure you preached this before too. When you talk about justice, mercy, and grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Justice is getting what you deserve.
Yep.
Mercy is not getting what you deserve, and grace is getting what you don't deserve. And the story that I used to paint back in my preaching days was this: you steal a bike,
Okay.
you get caught, you go to court, go before the judge. Justice says you have to pay for your crime, so
Right.
you're either paying a fine or you're going to jail, right?
Right.
Mercy says the case is dismissed, but grace says that you not only are not punished, but you actually get a new bike,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And this is how it's framed in the grace movement.
True.
In other words, you're getting Jesus deserves everything. So because you're in Christ, you get everything.
Right.
But there's a problem with that, right? Because even though grace is the standard, mercy and justice are still part of the makeup. And and what I mean by that is, let me say this first of all. I'm going to go ahead and hit the apex of it right at the beginning,
Sure.
because in my opinion, I'm prefacing this with in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
that out of all the Christian movements, out of all the Christian reformations, out of all the Christian ideologies and theologies,
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that grace is the most disingenuous.
Okay.
It's the most dishonest, the most intellectually dishonest, because it sets you up to believe that all of Jesus's riches and glory are yours,
Yeah.
but it's unconditional, but in the very tiny print at the bottom it says conditions apply. Some conditions apply.
Yeah.
And to me that's a problem. And one of the things, like Aaron, you and I were both, up and coming in the grace movement.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people cited our work, cited our teachings and things like that as paradigmatic of what this teaching should look like, right?
Right. Right.
And I remember, and this was a thing for me, that when all of these cases of police brutality or black people being killed by police,
Mm-hmm.
and the Black Lives Matter movement began in earnest. And I would say, okay, we need to deal with this. This is a problem. This is an issue. This is something that faces this country. But I've also said, and I stand by this. I stand by this resolutely, that if the Christian church in America simply just said, hey, that's fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
That's wrong. We need to fix this. And if the church spoke up about this, a lot of things would happen, and they would happen with great velocity and volume.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a precedent for that. 1965, Edmund Pettus Bridge, Civil Rights Movement. Or 1964, I'm sorry. And when the marchers crossed this bridge, the Alabama State Police, the Selma Police Department, and other Perry County sheriffs, all of these people, they gathered in and they turned the hoses and the dogs and the riot batons on the people that were crossing this bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happened that on that particular night, or actually that particular afternoon, CBS News was on site and they broadcast the thing live into the houses of Americans across the country. Now, there were people in California, Wyoming, Montana, Washington State that they knew what was going on in the South, but it was like, but that's not our problem. It's a
Right.
Southern problem, right? There were people in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Pennsylvania. They knew that this was going on, but they were like, But when they saw that, people were not only moved with compassion, but they were moved with outrage.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, this cannot stand.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to say we're a nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all, then this must stop. And it was said, and I don't know whether this is an urban legend or whether it's true or not, because there are a lot of different sources that cite this, but it said that the people were so outraged by what they saw that they called the Capitol, they called the White House to the degree that the switchboards broke.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, that was a turning point for the civil rights movement. That this began the necessary human velocity required to change the situation.
Right.
And so, by the same token, if people spoke up the same way about the George Floyds, the Breonna Taylors, and the Tatiana Jacksons of the world, the Philando Castiles, if they spoke up, Sandra Bland, if they spoke up, they can fix this. They can put a dent in this with the quickness.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where justice comes in, because I heard so many Christians say something like, well, George Floyd, he was a drug addict.
Right.
He was an ex-porn star. He deserved what happened to him. I'm like, whoa, hang on, guys. How about this grace?
Right.
How about grace? And so that's the Christian part of it. But in the secular part of it, we talk about, okay, we want to be gracious.
Mm-hmm.
We want to extend grace, but it's like grace is only available if you're the right ethnicity or the right culture.
Sure.
It's this grace, and this is a funny thing. I used to say God's unconditional grace or unconditional love and unlimited grace. That was how I used to frame it. Well, what I found out is that this love and this grace, this love was actually conditional, and this grace was limited.
Mm-hmm.
And that this love and this grace didn't extend universally to people who look like me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started asking questions. I said, okay, well, what if it's one of my kids, And they said, well, Derrick, we know that you raise your kids right, so we know that that whatever happened to your kids, we know that it was wrong.
Oh
Now,
my.
how do you make that judgment about me and exclude that or reserve that judgment for someone else when you don't really know me any better than you know them?
Yeah.
And that just used to really turn my crank. And I said to myself, okay, what I found was that there were a lot of racists hiding in the grace movement, and it was a good place to hide. Because, see, the grace movement was basically, this was the love and light movement of Christianity.
Yeah, that's true. Very
Right?
true.
So if you're in the grace movement, then no matter what you say or do, you can't be painted or you can't be castigated as being a racist. Why? Because you're talking about unconditional love and unlimited grace. How could you possibly be a racist? what I found out is that this was a this remember when we were kids, we play hide and go seek, and remember when you found a hiding place, that this hiding place was just, I mean, this was pimp style. It was the best, right? And you knew that as long as you could find this spot and nobody else knew where this spot was, you were golden. Every time you played, you could just wear this spot out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what the grace movement turned out to be for a whole lot of racists.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when I saw that, and what was interesting about it is that not only would white grace preachers not call each other out on their racism, but black grace preachers wouldn't call the white grace preachers out on their shit.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I began to see it for the fraud that it really was, because you're trying to paint this picture of everything is so loving and wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is all right hand path. Everything is all kumbaya. Everything is all love and light, and it's not. It's absolutely rotten to the core.
Right.
And that's where I'll stop.
Yeah. So part of it is like spiritual bypassing, right? So I remember years ago, because of my psychology background, reading a book by Carl Jung on alchemy.
Mm.
And that was kind of my introduction to Carl Jung outside of, what I learned in the classroom. That was my first time reading original writings by him. And I was shocked in the introduction because he is taking the church and the Christian message to task within its own framework. So what I mean was he wasn't critiquing in the sense that a scientist might critique, or that a anthropologist might critique, or an atheist might critique. He's critiquing almost from within, which I found really interesting, because he's dealing with concepts like sin. He's dealing with concepts like Christ and being conformed to the image of Christ. And he brings up this whole transactional nature of human character flaws. Let's put it that way. He called it sin, but let's call it human character flaws, right? And he really gives a strong rebuke to this idea that, kind of like, the problem with Christianity is you have this ideal, which is Christ. You have this ideal that you proclaim, being an unconditionally loving person, turning the other cheek, loving your enemy, whatever the case may be, right? And that's your ideal. But when it comes to your own personal character flaws and issues, we create this system that allows for you to deal with it outside of yourself. So he talks about this idea of laying your sins at the cross, coming to Jesus and asking for forgiveness. And it's all judicial. So somebody could be totally guilty of a crime, and that crime can be an isolated action, a crime of passion, a mistake, an isolated incident. But let's say in the case that it's not an isolated incident. In other words, you have a pattern of criminal behavior in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You have a psychology of criminal thinking in your life. And so what you do, what you're being brought up on charges in, is a representation. It's a snapshot of who you are. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And you can go to court and the prosecution fails to prove its case. In criminal courts, you have to have a unanimous jury. You get a juror on there that just, for whatever reason, won't go along with the rest of the jury and say that you're guilty. And you can get off on that, right? You can be declared just as if you never did anything wrong, right?
Yep. Justification. Justify, never done it.
Right. And you're let out. But that didn't do anything to address the patterns of thinking and behavior that caused the crime in the first place.
Right.
And that's really the point that Carl Jung's making in his introduction to his book on alchemy. He's saying the problem basically with Christianity is that it has this thing that does not touch the inner person, does not cause transformation, and does not cause growth. Now, I know if there are any grace preachers listening, which there probably are because of the title, and they want to come just like spy out
Yep.
liberty, as Paul said.
Yep. That's
You're gonna
exactly
say,
what I was thinking, by the way.
yeah, you're going to say, well, we talk about the transforming power of the Holy Spirit, but we talk about it in such a vague way that we don't really know how that transformation occurs. So, as a psychologist, what we would say that you're doing, grace preachers, is
Mhm.
engaging in what's called magical thinking. You're just telling us that if we pray for the infilling of the Holy Spirit and surrender our lives to the Holy Spirit, that somehow magically by the power of grace we are transformed. And I think what you're bringing out, Derrick, is that when you put it in the context of the way grace preachers responded to you when it came to the injustices in the American legal system towards people of color,
Mhm.
it's very much a magical thinking kind of thing and a spiritual bypassing. And it comes right back to what Carl Jung said, that there's not something powerful enough. And that's the problem, because grace preachers go around talking about power. They go around talking about the power of the Holy Spirit. This is good news. This is the gospel, the power of God unto salvation. It's going to transform your life and all this stuff, but it can't produce the goods when it's put under the microscope in something as woven into the culture of American fabric
Yep.
as racism, right? So we can't see it. We can't deal with it. We can't address it. So don't talk about that. Just talk about the power of God. Well, why? Because this is a case study in how the power of God, the way that you're preaching at Grace Preachers and presenting it, is not producing the results that you claim that
Exactly.
it should produce. So therefore, at some point, there has to come a point, if you are a sincere person, if you are an integrous person, if the truth of the message and the validity and the power of the message that you proclaim means anything to you at all, then you need to examine your own integrity
Yep.
regarding this message, because it's not producing the fruit that you claim that it is. So therefore, you are a liar on some level, and you're going to have to then come to grips with the fact that you are spreading lies under the hypocritical guise of preaching the pure gospel, which clearly you are not.
Right.
This isn't a new critique. This is something that goes all the way back to the 1930s and 40s
Yep.
when Carl Jung was writing. And so, what do you think about that?
No, I'm completely on board with that. It's like, one of the things that really challenges me is like, okay, how grace is. We talk about the justice system in this country, how the justice system is different, right? It's
Mhm.
different for, men, women, different for straight, gay, different for black, white, right? And so let's look at some events in American history. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor.
Mhm.
Never forget, right? 9/11, 2001. Never forget, right?
Right.
But 1619, oh, that's critical race theory. You know, in other words, or if you talk about Bloody Sunday,
Mhm.
1964, Edmund Pettus Bridge, we just talked about that. Never forget. No, why do you? And people will say, well, Derrick, why do you keep bringing that kind of stuff up, right? And so what I think, Carl Jung was right in that, that Christianity fosters this magical thinking that somehow things are just going to be okay if we sweep them under the rug, right? And this was a really major indictment against Christianity, but this is the issue, right? I'm on record as saying this before. I'm a cancer survivor, and
Mhm.
and the reason why I'm a cancer survivor is because, basically the doctors looked at a situation. They said, this could be cancerous. So let's drill down into it, and they come to find out it actually is cancerous. Oh, okay. So here's the deal, Derrick. You can, because we caught it early and it's small, we can either do nothing, which is okay, or we can treat it. And these are the treatment options, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the treatment began with a diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
that was by the doctors, right? An
Right.
external assessment and an acknowledgement, internal, right? So there had to be an internal and external agreement about what the situation is
Right.
before the treatment plan could begin.
Right.
Now, so I opted for one of the treatment plans and went through the treatment, and it was arduous and it was tough, but I survived it. And not only that, I'm cancer free. Okay. So the point is that, like what Carl Jung was alluding to, is that this magical thinking says, if I just pretend it doesn't exist,
Right.
if I just ignore what's going on around me, then it'll be okay. And this is what Christianity in general practices this,
Mm-hmm.
but the grace movement raises it to high art.
It does.
And that's my issue, because if you look at it through the definition that I posted up on the screen, the difference between justice, mercy, and grace, then that means that grace is the thing that separates our theology, or when I say our, when we were in the grace movement, this is what separates our theology from everyone else's.
Right.
That we are no longer counting the sins of people against them, because God, in his infinite wisdom, sent his son to die on the cross for us. So now this grace exists that wipes away our sin slate. Here's the problem with that, is that wiping away the sin slate is only good as long as you understand what the sin is, and make a conscientious effort to do something about it, right? Because if you just say, well, something, God has wiped away all my sins. But if you're a rapist, I don't know if I can say that on Facebook. Okay, let me say something else, because they'll blank that one out. If you're a murderer, right? And you're Jeffrey Dahmer.
Mm-hmm.
Let's use Jeffrey Dahmer because he's a good case study in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because allegedly Jeffrey Dahmer gave his life over to Christ
Right.
before he died.
Right.
Okay. So we say, well, Jesus has grace for Jeffrey Dahmer. But does he? Does he really? Because did Jeffrey Dahmer repent? And I'm not talking about confess his sins. I'm talking about change his mind
Mm-hmm.
about what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he didn't, honestly, is there any forgiveness without acknowledgement, without contrition? Because biblically, we know that there isn't.
Right.
That unless you are willing to confess your indiscretions, there can be no forgiveness. So watch this. I posted this during the week, that America, which is ostensibly a Christian nation, conveniently omits its own sins. It doesn't confess to or repent of anything.
Mm-hmm.
It just simply says, okay, if we don't teach it, if we don't talk about it, if we don't make this an issue, then it's not an issue. Hey, why can't we just move forward and forget about the past?
Yeah.
Except when it's convenient not to forget about the past. So I'm completely with you, and I'm with Carl Jung, that we have to, first of all, let me say this, that in order to get out of this magical thinking, we have to first dispense of the notion of what we consider to be magic. And I do believe that magic, real magic, is a thing.
Hmm.
A lot of I'm going to get in trouble with my atheist friends over that,
Yeah.
but I believe that that's a thing.
Mm.
I believe that you're able to, conjure something or pull something from another dimension. You could call it conjuring or whatever, and you make something happen. Okay, but magical thinking in the realm of Christianity just simply says that if I believe strongly enough,
Right.
I don't have to do anything else. All
Right.
I have to do is believe, and this situation will change. Well, that's not the way it works. It's like if you think that you have cancer and you don't go to the doctor and get diagnosed and get treated, then your belief means nothing.
Right.
Your matter of fact, your belief may actually lead you to death.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So on some level, what we're talking about then with this stuff really boils down to, again, spiritual bypassing, right? Like
Yep.
not doing the hard work. And I think Doug talked about this last week. If you guys missed us on Facebook, go to Derrick's YouTube channel. Just type in Derrick Day into the YouTube channel and watch last week's episode. But Doug talked about the idea that, I just have to stay positive. I just have to focus on positive thinking, and
Yep.
the negative will be displaced. And of course, I mean, everything has to be nuanced. Of course, if you just focus on the negative in your life, you're going to, drown in a pool of shame, I
You
suppose.
manifest negativity.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, when we're talking, and this is why I thought it was so interesting in that it was Jung's book on alchemy. So alchemy, for most people, is, they think of superstitions in, the Middle Ages, people trying to transform lead into gold and, all this stuff. But
Yep. Oh,
that's
by the way,
really,
go back 2 years. For those of you who are watching, go back about 2 years. We did a show on alchemy.
we did.
Yep.
But that's more a metaphor. And I'm not saying there weren't people trying to do that. They were working, trying to understand chemistry and all that. And chemistry comes out of alchemy. But at the end of the day, it was about understanding that there are base materials and there are precious materials, right,
Mhm.
in the world. And the world view, the cosmology of the alchemists was as without, so within. So if there are base materials and precious elements in the world out there, there's base materials and precious elements in the world in here. And so the focus of alchemy was to be able to take those base materials, those, cheap, raw, kind of garbage materials that are inside of us as
Yep.
human beings, and work with them in a way that would transform them into something precious and rare. And so what Doug was saying last week was there are some issues that you have to dive into. In other words, if it's possible to turn lead into gold, you have to have lead before you have the gold.
Yep.
So from the internal perspective, there's lead inside of us. There's tin inside of us. There's, uh, racism, lack of self-control. We could, you mentioned other crimes that I won't repeat for whatever
Yeah.
reason, those things can be in there. That can be considered the raw materials. And so the idea is to dive into those and work in those, not ignore them. In other words, I can't pretend that I have gold. So in the alchemical process, I have to take the base metals and turn them into precious. I have to take the lead and turn it into gold. Well, I can't just manifest gold out of nothing.
Right.
I have to work with the lead that's there, right? So I have to be willing to confront the issues that are in my life. And here's the thing, because so much of our thinking is the byproduct of our genetics, number one, and number two, the byproduct of the culture in which we've been raised, then I have to assume that I have inherited genetic lead and I have inherited I've been programmed with lead. Nature and nurture both gives me lead, right? So, as a white person in America who comes from a very white family, my family was very committed to keeping the genetics keeping the genetics pure, right? Um, so I have inherited lead from my genetic memories. Um, our friend Vanessa Brooks sent me a thing that she did for the global, what was it called? Global Center for Research for Global Center for Religious Studies, and she presented on mental health and clergy from an African American perspective. And she talked in her talk that she gave about epigenetics and how generational trauma can be inherited through the genes. So we know for sure that trauma impacts the body, that the body holds trauma. There's a great book out there by one of the leading thought leaders in the area of trauma called The Body Keeps Score. So trauma doesn't just get into my thinking and into my head, it gets into my body, it gets into the way I feel, it gets into my genetics. And then that apparently, according to Vanessa, can be passed on to other generations. Well, then why can't belief systems also be passed on? So if as a white person, I have probably inherited a certain epigenetics with a predisposition towards racism, that would be, that's not rocket science if what she's saying true, right? And then I've grown up in a culture, me specifically, in a culture that programmed me in that way. So then I have to accept that I've got a lot of lead. So this isn't about, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, and I'm kind of venturing off of Grace, but for me, this isn't about, well, Derrick, I I love you. You're my brother. You're doing better than I am at life in terms of prosperity right now. Um, so what do I have to feel bad about? What do I have to confess? What, you know, I wasn't enslaving anybody. I wasn't being racist towards anybody, but that totally misses the issue. It completely and utterly misses the mark. The idea is, what is the genetic imprint that I might have received that would make me predisposed to think differently about you or differently about people of color than I think about people of my own color of skin, my own culture, right?
Yeah.
And then I grew up in a culture that programmed me with, I mean, it still just shocks me. We had some Asian neighbors. They've moved away because they didn't feel safe here because of the pandemic. But they got to where they felt so unsafe. And this wasn't because they were watching news. This was because of encounters they were having on a daily basis with people. They felt so unsafe that they went and took a concealed carry class that the NRA conducted. And they noticed and gave us feedback from it. They noticed that in every instance, the good guy with the gun was white and the bad guy with the gun was usually black. Well, that's subconscious programming, right? Or if I go and watch, I grew up on Star Wars, and so you got, Ben Kenobi and Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Princess Leia. They're all white. Well, what's Darth Vader wearing? And who voiced Darth Vader?
Yeah. James Earl Jones.
And then later we throw in, kind of and I hope this isn't offensive, but I want to say from my perspective, kind of the token black dude in, Billy D. Williams and Lando Calrissian or something in the next episode. So my point is, like, I'm growing up with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone and, Bruce Willis and Luke Skywalker. And so it becomes normalized. This idea of white supremacy becomes normalized. And, Julie said something to me interesting today. She said she was watching a bunch of TikTok videos about The Little Mermaid, the movie that came out. And she said she just cried for 10 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty ugly out there. Cause I'm thinking, she's watching videos about I'm getting choked up just talking about it. She's watching videos about, this white fragility and white rage towards, oh my God, they cast Ariel with a, black as a black mermaid. Like, who, from my perspective as a white person, who cares about that, right?
Yep.
And I assumed that's what she was looking at because I've seen all that out there. And she said, no, she said, I'm watching TikTok video after.
Take your time, man.
I'm watching TikTok video after TikTok video of these black little girls. And she's singing the song, I just want to be part of this world.
God damn.
And these girls just light up, they just light up. Just innocent, nobody's programmed them, and they just light up and say, that's me, I just want to be part of this world. And that's something I never had to face as a white person. So, so what I'm saying is it's not about what my ancestors did or didn't do in the sense of, like I was saying to you before, well, I didn't do that. I wasn't guilty of that. It's not about that. It's about a culture that still needs to be corrected. It still has a lot of lead. And so why can't we look at that? Why can't we look at that as, as white people and just say, yeah, I've got a lot of genetic junk in the trunk. I've got a lot of, I'm sorry.
That's okay, bro. And
But why can't we just say, let's look at that and let's address this and let's not be defensive about this and let's not pass this on, to the next generation. So anyway, I'm sorry.
no, man, dude, I appreciate your realness and your transparency. And let me say this to you and every white person watching is that there are many white people that don't bear the sin of slavery. They didn't cause it, they didn't participate in it. I get it, right? But as you and I we've talked about that what happens is that even if you weren't participating in it, you benefited from it, right? Now this is not a knock on you. This is just the system and the way it's designed. But what I want to say to you and to everyone else who's in your mind space is that no one is asking you to bear the guilt
Right.
of what is done, right? That's not the ask, right? The ask is simply saying, okay, that we do acknowledge that the system exists and that there's something that needs to be done about it. That if we're going to talk about grace, that this grace means giving people a seat at the table that would ordinarily would not have. But let me give you some good news. Can I preach some good news for a minute?
Yes.
Can I
Yes.
preach some good news? Let me preach some good news. Is that we're talking about alchemy, and alchemy is the forerunner to chemistry. But one of the things that we know about physics is that lead, a base metal, it comes from the decay of uranium. Uranium is the heaviest naturally occurring element, right? So uranium exists, and we talk about half-lives and things like that, and rate of decay and all of that, and over millions of years that uranium decays into lead,
Mhm.
right? So we're talking about dealing with the lead in our lives. But here's the good news is that gold comes from the nuclear fusion of
Mhm.
lead atoms.
Interesting.
so that the lead that has come from decay into our lives, that when we apply the light of reason, the light of love, the light of true grace,
Mm.
not Christian grace, but
Right.
true grace, that when we apply this, that we ignite a fusion reactor and a fusion reaction that turns the lead in our lives into gold. That we turn, so basically we're taking something that is radioactive, highly radioactive and deadly, that over time decays into a base metal, but we can take that base metal and through our actions, through our agreement, through our cooperation, that we can ignite the fusion reactor of humanity to turn the dross of lead into gold.
Right.
And and that may be an oversimplification, but it works for me.
But yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. But the point I'm making is, like, I don't want to get lost in the emotionalism of it. The point I'm trying to make is, like, we have to look at that stuff. Like, we have to look at that, and we have to not be afraid to look at that stuff in us, whether it's racism or it's some other issue. Like, it's just there, right?
Yeah.
And so there's the potential, and I love how you brought out the physics part of it, because I didn't know about that, but there's the potential to take that stuff and absolutely transform it. And so that's, that's my life's work. I mean, that's what we do in counseling, right? I've never had anybody show up for counseling ever and say, man, my life is just so great, and I think that you can help me make it greater, or I want someone who can help me take it to the next level. It's really good now, but I really want to, I know there's more and I want to go to the next level. Like, that's not why my profession exists, right? My profession is about, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, um, um, whatever. And it's about taking that base material, right, and looking at it and examining it, and then through a process, transforming that into something that does take you to the next level. And so the point I'm trying to make is, we still tend to look at this, and this issue specifically about systemic racism, we tend to look at it as from a crime and punishment model, right? Like, um, okay, that's terrible what my ancestors, presumably, I mean, I just have to assume, I don't know. I don't know what my ancestors were. I don't know if they were wealthy, slave owners. I have no idea. But assuming they were, like, the actions that they committed, when you were talking about justice earlier, are completely unjust, completely wrong, completely reprehensible. Um, it's not really about that. That's going back to what Carl Jung was rebuking. It's not, and when I say it's not about that, what I mean, Derrick, is it's not about the guilt and punishment of it. It's not about that. It's about looking at the way society is constructed today because of that. What are we living with today because of the sins of our ancestors? What are we living with today because of the fabric of our nation? What are we living with today? What do we continue to perpetuate and pass on to the next generation? That's present tense stuff. So this
Right.
doesn't have anything to do with, you know, feeling guilty that your ancestors were slaves and mine weren't. It's not about that, because otherwise we fall into the same trap of just laying our sins at the cross, right? Like,
Right.
and how many, like, I can't even tell you, dude, how many of my friends were involved in, like, racial reconciliation services where you get the white churches together and they wash the feet of the black pastors, or they confess and please ask, forgive our ancestors. That's complete bullshit. That doesn't even get to the root of the issue in any way, shape, or form. We have to look at what's happening today, and that requires then that we deal in reality and not these forms of spiritual bypassing and magical thinking that we were talking about earlier. So maybe to kind of bring it back around out of the alchemy discussion and back to the grace discussion. But yeah, what do you think about that? I mean, am I off base on what I'm saying?
No, no, not at all. And here's the thing. You're saying, and you're saying this exactly the way it needs to be said, that we need to resurrect this from like a past tense discussion to saying that this is a present tense thing. And
Right.
that because again, when you're diagnosed with cancer, it isn't like, okay, man, we got to go back and trace this back to all the cigarettes you smoked or all the booze you drank or whatever, right? It isn't what you did in the past. It's like, okay, how do we deal with this situation right now? And that's the thing. So bringing this back into grace, the grace of it is that you know, that you are not held guilty for what happened in the past. That's the grace part, right? But there is, and again, let me say this, right? That I've learned that there is a mercy and justice component to this, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes mercy means holding someone guiltless even though you know they're dead wrong.
Hmm.
And that's a hard thing to do, but there are some cases, let me put it this way, that when you do something that is wrong, but no one is that there's no long-term harm
Hmm.
as a result of it. I'm of the mindset, let me put it in a modern context, right? That I'm of the mindset that people who are in prison right now for having possession of marijuana or having personal possession of of drugs, cocaine, even heroin, right? Meth, whatever, right? I don't think these people should be in prison. They're not violent offenders. They're not a threat to society. They're more of a threat to themselves. And so I think that a little bit of mercy can be extended to them. But see, the problem is that we say, okay, well, there's got to be justice, right? And so like there's this thing right now in California, in the San Francisco area, they have a shoplifting law that says that people who work in stores, they don't have the right to go after shoplifters. And so now there's allegedly a thing where people just routinely go into stores and Walgreens and CVS's and Trader Joe's or whatever, and they just grab stuff and walk out,
Right.
right? And so you could say, well, we need to have a presence of law enforcement to come in and stop these people, stop them from stealing, arrest them, convict them, send them to jail. And this is what I'm saying is that I'm all for justice when someone has physically harmed you.
Hmm.
I'm all for justice when someone has violated your personal boundary. I'm all for justice in those cases. In other words, violent crimes.
Hmm.
But there, for most nonviolent crimes, it's like people who are stealing food, they're stealing food because they can't afford to eat.
Hmm.
Should that person be in prison, incarcerated because of that? But then flip it over and you say, like, you have these bankers that fleece people out of billions of dollars
Hmm.
and they get to pay a fine and go home.
Hmm.
But people's lives were damaged. So it's like I'm all for justice, but I'm also for mercy.
Hmm.
That there are some cases where you're not supposed to get what you deserve. And then I'm also all about grace in that sometimes you get better than what you deserve. You get what you don't deserve.
Hmm.
Um, but here's the thing about this, right? And I want to say this real quick that basically the past, there is no justice for the past. There's no way to mete out justice for the past because the people who lived in the past neither can be tried or convicted for what was done, nor can the people in the past receive any compensation for the harm that was done to them.
Hmm.
So now we're left with mercy and grace. And at this point, this is where we have to look at this logically and reasonably and say, okay, in what cases does mercy apply? And in what cases does grace apply?
Hmm.
And I think that's where we need to get to, because I mentioned at the beginning that we're talking about grace as it applies to secular things. And so let me give you an example. In the political sphere, you have Donald Trump, and
Right.
and Donald Trump was indicted this week of 37 counts of various magnitude. And some people will say, well, we need to have justice. We need to have justice, that he has to answer for his crimes, and he has to be punished for his crimes. Okay, but if you look at this 37 count indictment, and if you were to apply that, if all 37 counts hold sway, this man will not only be in prison for the rest of his life, but his corpse will be in
Very well.
prison
Right.
for some time. I mean, I'm being facetious, but
Yeah, 400 years, I think,
yeah.
maximum sentence.
But the point that I'm getting at is okay, is 400 years, is that is there any grace in that? Now,
Right.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but the man is 70 plus years old, right?
Hmm.
That a reasonable expectation could say, okay, 20 years.
Hmm.
I think that would be applying a whole lot of grace to the situation,
Hmm.
a whole lot of mercy to the situation. Listen, I'm not a Trump fan, and listen, the whole concept of him going to prison is very attractive to me.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I have a tender heart.
Yeah. When you're talking, I'm going back to another episode we did. We talked about the episode we did on alchemy, but we also did an episode on the punitive justice versus restorative justice.
Exactly. Yep.
And so here's my thoughts on it at the moment. Um, Restorative justice would be all about growth and change to bring it in with alchemy and transformation, right?
Yep.
So where there is growth, where there is change, then may grace apply.
That's a good way of putting it.
And this is one of the things that frustrates me as a white person about the racial discussion in America, um, because is there, I mean, and you said this, Derrick, you said this, and this has stayed with me for the last 5 years. We did I think the first time we ever did anything, we did it on my YouTube channel.
Yep.
We talked about race, and we talked about the Ahmed Aubrey thing. And you made this statement, and this was seared me. This like branded me in a good way. Um, and what I mean by that was it just left a mark, like an indelible mark that was painful to hear, but it stayed with me. That's what I mean by that. You said racism in America is a white person problem. In other words, you guys created the problem. So
Yep.
it's going to require that white people fix it.
Yep. I still believe that.
And so I guess what I would say is, I mean, there are a lot of really nasty people out there that don't give a, that they want to perpetuate racism.
Yep.
They want to keep it going. They want to keep that system going. And then there are people who need to grow out of it and maybe want to grow out of it. And so I think for those people, there needs to be grace. And I don't know how we discern one from the other, but it's almost like there has to be grace somewhere. And I don't know where, but there has to be a space for white people to process, not in a way that's harmful, not in a way that perpetuates racism, not in a way that continues to bring harm, not in a way that perpetuates white privilege. But I'm talking about a space to process this stuff and say, hey, this was in my genes, this was in my family, this is the way I was raised, this was the culture, and I don't know how to think. I know how I thought before based on the programming and based on my genetic inheritance is not how I want to proceed and how I want to go forward, but I'm not going to be able to get from where I was to where I want to be overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the process? What is the process there? And I think that's the missing part of the conversation, like, or one of the missing parts of the conversation. What's the process? And I know when I was in school, I took a multiculturalism class, and I know, they have different stages, white guild and all this other stuff. And I just don't find that satisfying. And so I think that's where grace could apply in this situation. Grace from whom I don't know. But do you understand what I'm saying? Like, if we take a restorative framework, a restorative justice framework to this, we say, okay, let's look at growth as a person. Let's look at growth as a society. Let's look at growth as a people. And let's look at reconciliation and healing as a process. And then what does that process look like, not just from the perspective of people of color, but what does that look like from the perspective of white people who are trying to get out of the matrix?
Yeah. And that's the key. It's like restorative justice. Grace has to apply where restorative justice is possible.
Right.
Right? Because if restorative justice is not possible, then grace cannot apply there. Because then you're extending false grace, and basically you're extending a hall pass. And that's something you don't want to do.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to give a hall pass to the guy that's just going to keep perpetuating the same thing, right? That's not trying to change or look at the issues or struggle with the issues. They're just looking for the hall pass.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't know if you noticed, but our
I
man Jimmy
noticed.
Ligon is there. Jimmy.
Great to have you on, brother.
Hey, what's up, guys? I kind of missed because I came in late because I was on a call with a friend of mine from high school, haven't talked to in 7 years. So her and I were getting caught up. But you were emotional about something, and I don't know exactly what it was about. I kind of got the gist, but I had to tell you that I love you, brother, because you're, like you said, your transparency and the fact that you actually care means a lot to a lot of people. And when I see that, because I'm a really, really nice person, I try to be. I know sometimes on my podcast I seem a little fiery.
No, I love that.
But that's just my true emotion coming out about certain things that I just totally detest about.
Jimmy, I have a good term for you, right?
What's that?
You're a dick for good.
Yeah, I am. I am kind of a dick for good. You're right.
No, I mean, and I mean that in the best way.
Yeah.
I love your shows.
Thank you.
I love what you put out there, and I'm honored to be even on the periphery of what it is that you do.
Oh, I appreciate that, brother. That's really nice for you to say. But as far as what you guys were just talking about, I kind of get what you said about the justice thing, because I truly believe that anybody who is in prison for just possession of something, well, you don't need to be in prison for that. That's ridiculous.
Mm. Why are people in prison for shoplifting?
Right. And it's like, okay, maybe some kind of system set up to where they need to pay that back in either some community service or do something nice. Maybe go to a class to learn that, to teach why stealing is not, even if you think it's a good reason to steal, maybe this is why you shouldn't do it. Right. And it's like our society needs to become more rehabilitative instead of trying to punish everybody.
Yep.
Because it obviously doesn't work. I mean, even when they had death penalty was prevalent across the country, people still kill people.
Right.
So the threat of killing you for killing someone else wasn't a deterrent.
Right.
Yep. Right. And it still isn't. And it probably never will be a deterrent, because there's an underlying reason why you do these things. And the penalty of death isn't strong enough to keep you from doing those if you're that type of person.
Right.
I think you need to get professional help from qualified psychologists to help you with that. And speaking of which, have you guys watched Nefarious?
No.
No.
Oh my God. It is the it is a horrible Christian apologetics kind of propaganda movie. And it's about this guy on death row and the psychologist comes to talk to him. And it's not bad to the point where you're mad because you watched it. But when you watch it, you'll be like this, get the fuck out of here. It's ridiculous. Now, I have to give props to the guy who played the inmate. That's the same guy who played one of the brothers on the Boondock Saints.
Okay.
Great. He did a good job,
Okay.
considering he was the only thing in the movie that was good. The guy who played the psychologist wasn't convincing. The guy who played the warden was not convincing. I think the two most convincing guys in the movie, to be honest with you, was the inmate guy, because he's actually a pretty decent actor. And then there's one guy who was only in there for like maybe not even 5 minutes, who was a barber who was shaving him before he went to the electric chair. The guy who was the barber was really the most convincing guy on the show besides the guy who was the inmate. And he was only in the movie for like 2 or 3 minutes. Everybody else was horrible.
Thanks for the movie review, Jimmy, because I had thought about going to see that.
No. I watched it. I'm not going to lie. I downloaded it, okay?
Okay.
And I watched it on my TV today while I was doing other things because I knew what type of movie it was. But I told my friend, because I have a friend of mine who's very Catholic, and I say very Catholic, I mean very Catholic. And she's like, "Oh, it was a great movie," and blah blah blah. This stuff. I was like, I told her. She goes, "Will you watch it? I know you won't." I said, "No, I said I would. I'm a man of my word. I'll watch the movie. It's no big deal to watch a movie. I can watch it while I'm doing other things, so I'm not really actually wasting any time. I sit here at my desk, do the stuff I need to do on my computer, and watch this movie. And boy, pu, it's bad. But
a good supernatural thriller or something. I didn't know
it was like it's okay. Like, I have no problem with movies that talk about Sean Patrick Flannery. Yeah, that's the guy that was the actor in the movie. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, he was the guy. He did a great job. But when you take a movie like Exorcist, that's a Catholic thriller, but the movie wasn't preachy and it wasn't propaganda.
Right.
It wasn't very propaganda driven.
Yeah.
Right.
So let me throw some movie shit in here, right?
Because the movie is horrible.
I don't know
but you still have to see it, Aaron. You have to see it.
Okay.
It's on my list. Is it on Netflix or?
It was on Jimmy's Plex server, and I downloaded it.
I was gonna say it's still out in the theater, I think,
it's in the theater. Yeah,
I think you have to pay to watch it on like Apple.
Okay.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: you guys got to watch Shiny Happy People.
Dude, I can't
Shiny?
begin to tell you. I started watching that because you told me about it last week. Sorry, Jimmy.
Okay.
And I'll have to tell you about it after because I can't.
I told you about we talked. I told you about my interaction with these people because I actually know the people involved personally.
It's called Shiny Happy People.
Shiny Happy People.
Oh, dude, you got to watch it, Jimmy. You got to watch it. I mean, just
I will too.
Yeah,
it's on Amazon, I think.
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime.
Good. I have Amazon. Cool.
It's 4 episodes.
It's a series. A mini.
It's a series, right?
Okay, gotcha.
But here's the thing. We're talking about justice, mercy, and grace, right? So here we have people who engaged in sexual assault under the auspices of Jesus.
Hey, Derrick, let me interrupt you real quick. I have got to go take care of something real quick, so I'm gonna let you guys kind of take over, and I'll be right back. All right?
Okay, cool, man. So people hiding behind Jesus and committing all sorts of sexual crimes. I mean, not indiscretions, out and out crimes, right? And so here we have a case where mercy and grace should not apply because there are people whose lives have been invariably, indelibly harmed by these actions.
Yeah.
And so here's a case where mercy and grace have to be taken out of the equation because there is no justification for for physically molesting young girls and boys. There's no justification for that. There's no rubric that can be applied that makes that okay.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I was saying about justice, mercy, and grace is that, and this is to Aaron's point, that if there is hope for restoration, if there is hope for reconciliation, if there is hope for somehow there can be a brighter future that emanates from this, great. Let's apply mercy and grace to this situation. Let's figure out how do we move forward from this. But there are some situations where there is no forward path. That there is there's a Latin term, a terminus, an ending for this, and that's all there is. There's an ending, and the ending can be either an ending that is better in light of the circumstances, or it's just simply not good.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things. And here's the thing is that the Shiny Happy People movie, that these people who were involved in this were some of the forerunners of the grace movement.
Oh, okay.
I mean, now, mind you, there was a lot of legalism, a lot of Old Testament, but it was like, okay, we're better because we're different. We don't just apply this legalistic paradigm to everything. That there's something good in this, and Jesus helps us overcome the shortcomings of the law, kind of thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so that I highly recommend. Listen,
I just looked it up on IMDb, and now that I know it's about the Duggars, I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm like they deserve they deserve no mercy. You're
I told Aaron about this is that Jim and Bobby Holt, who factor into this movie, were good friends of ours when we lived in Northwest Arkansas, right? And they introduced us to the Duggars, and so as a result, we all knew each other and all of that stuff, and I kind of fit their paradigm because I'm a Christian. I was a Christian preacher with a large family. I have 4 sons, and so the idea was, hey, maybe you guys ought to have some more kids.
Oh shit, man.
So
I definitely. I'm glad you said it was on Prime Video because pretty much everybody has Amazon Prime at this point, so it'd be easy for me to watch that. And I'm definitely going to get back to you on that too because I have to agree. I have to admit, this is the first that movie's Nefarious is the first movie that I watched that was made by Christians in order to put the Christian agenda out there. Because I mean, if you watch the movie, Derrick, I'm telling you, it's overly obvious that that's what the movie was about. Because how do you have a guy who's possessed by a demon, and the demon is telling you how bad abortion is and all these other things? I'm like going, okay, first of all, a psychologist is not going to be mentally compromised by a guy who's on death row, and he's not going to act this way. So it was kind of unbelievable in that way. Now, don't get me wrong. When I watch movies, especially like movies like John Wick, there's some stuff you just have to you have to suspend the belief a lot of for John Wick to because John Wick's in entertainment and the story actually carries itself. It makes sense. The people in the movie are very good. People are very engaging, things of that nature. But when you watch this movie, it's so blatantly preachy and propagandistic, and I don't even know if that's a word, but that's what it is. And it's just so blatantly it's not even to the point where you get upset. I was laughing through this movie. It's like, you ever watch a movie that was so bad that you liked it?
Oh yeah.
That's what Nefarious is. I might watch it again with Eva just because I wasn't mad that I watched it, but it was so absurd. It was just so, you have to let me know if you felt the same way.
Yeah,
But
like Sharknado.
oh my God. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but I want to watch that so bad. I do. Thank you for mentioning that. I just another movie I need to watch. But yeah, it's one of those, bro. Where you just like Idiocracy. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to watch it simply because of what it is.
Yeah.
And now that you've mentioned the shiny happy people thing, I'll probably watch that this weekend, bro. I have to knock that out because that just sounds so interesting to me. Because it's about the Duggars, and I know what they're all about.
Aaron,
Those are horrible people.
we were talking about the shiny happy people in the context of justice, mercy, and grace. It's like there was so much abuse, sexual abuse that happened in that whole IBP basically paradigm that they had, and so basically there is no mercy or grace. There can be no mercy or grace because there is no restoration. There is no redemption. There is no recompense. There is no repentance. Right? It's just that this is how they believed, and as a result, the only thing that you're left with is justice, right? The justice has to be meted out in this case. And so but the funny thing about this is that whole system that was that basically that the Duggars and all of the people like them that they were under, that this was part of what was called the modern grace movement. Now, they subscribe to a lot of legalism, but they were at the forefront of what this unconditional love and unlimited grace movement looked like. And this is why I was saying that to me, I'm on the record as saying this, and I'll say it again for everybody that hasn't heard it, is that to me, the most intellectually honest flavor of Christianity is Calvinism. Because they are what they are. They make no apologies for what they are. They make no apologies for their doctrine. They make no apologies for their beliefs, for their theology. They don't sugarcoat it. This is how they are. And my thing is that, like I've said this before, that when people go into deconstruction, right, that basically there are three possible outcomes of Christian deconstruction. One is I come to the conclusion that there is a spirituality greater than Christianity. That's one. The second one is I believe all of this is bullshit, and therefore I'm an atheist. Right? Or number three, I believe that all of this has to be literal, and I have to adhere to it with all fidelity and faithfulness. Those are the only three possible outcomes of deconstruction as far as I can see. Now, some people may be able to nuance that further, but from where I sit, that's what it comes down to. Either you're spiritual but not religious, complete atheist, or I've dug in my heels and where I was in terms of my Christianity wasn't far enough.
Yeah, I can see
I
that.
would, yeah, I would agree with that. Yep, 100%. You're one of the three.
Yep, you got to come up with one of the three. Ben is saying he might be able to join momentarily.
Yeah, I was seeing that. I'm kind of excited. I don't know him that well, so it'd be great to get to know that guy.
Yeah, it'd be great to have him on, but again, this is what I want to say is that I think that grace in the secular world is often misapplied. In other words, we want to apply grace where it should not be applied. That we want to give people grace that shouldn't have it, and then we want to deny grace to people that should have it. Let me give you another good example, right? Alec Baldwin, right? Alec Baldwin, he's in this movie and he has an accident where a firearm is discharged and apparently this firearm discharging kills someone, right? Now, Alec Baldwin, I don't think that he had any intent of malice. I think that this was a prop device gone bad. Simple. And this has happened before, right? That Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, was killed in a misadventure. Peter Duell, who was one of the leads in the 70s TV series Alias Smith and Jones, the same thing.
Right? I didn't know that. I used to watch that as a kid. I didn't know that.
Man, I loved and that show had fire.
Yeah,
it was like it was a modern take on the 60s Western, right?
Didn't that one guy die in Apocalypse Now too?
What's that?
During the filming of Apocalypse Now, there was an actor who died during the helicopter
there was
scene.
a guy that died during Apocalypse Now. Yeah. I mean, there are things like that where these things happen where there's a misadventure. There's a prop device that goes bad or whatever, right? And in those cases, there should be grace. But here's the thing, like Alec Baldwin is not the same as Billy Baldwin. Billy Baldwin is a very devout Christian. Right? Alec Baldwin is an atheist. And so the Christian community went after Alec Baldwin with all ferocity that he needs to be brought to justice for the crime that he committed. He didn't commit a crime. He had a prop weapon that did not function the way it was supposed to. But there's no grace for him.
If that was Billy Baldwin, they wouldn't have said that.
If it was Billy Baldwin, there would have been all grace. Obviously, this is just the secular community trying to set up a Christian actor. I mean, there would have been all kinds of mental gymnastics that happened to justify that. So again, here is a case where mercy and grace should be the de facto standard in how we judge this. But that's not the case in the Christian community. The Christian community is calling for his head. But it's like, secular humanists, atheists, whatever, love and light, they're all like, oh, well, we need to wait and see. We need to wait till all the facts come out. And that's actually the right approach.
Yep.
But again, this is my issue with this, is that the quote unquote grace community, right? They are only gracious to those whom they deem worthy of grace.
Mhm.
And to me, that smacks of intellectual dishonesty. Either grace is gracious and is gracious to all, or grace is not gracious and is gracious to none.
Yeah.
It can only be one of those two. I'm not the kind of person that automatically devolves into binary thinking, but that is where I land with that.
Yeah. There's so many problems with that movement. I mean, honestly. I mean, let's not just like all the stuff we talked about, but what about all the verses in the Bible that they have trouble with? Like Hebrews chapter 10, goes on talking about if you continue to sin willfully after you've received the knowledge of the truth,
Yeah.
there's nothing that awaits you but fiery judgment. It's a fearful thing to
Or
fall into the
those who
hands of
have
the living
tasted
God.
of the heavenly gift.
Yeah, but in Hebrews 10, it actually says, therefore let us have grace whereby we may serve God with fear.
Oh
Nobody ever
wow.
quotes that grace verse.
Hold
No,
on.
they don't.
You just said something there, man. Because you put grace and fear in the same
Well,
sentence.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's been a minute since I read it, but I'll check while you guys are talking, make sure I got it right.
No, that's exactly
But I
that's
mean, we
exactly
just
it.
take a huge editor, like we just black out shit in the Bible. I mean, anyway, I could go on.
But yeah, I get I know exactly what you're talking about, Aaron, because it that goes to the point of a lot of Christians are just supreme cherry pickers when it comes to
Yeah,
the Bible, and it's so funny. It's
yeah,
like, dude, I'm not even going to argue with you because you're so ridiculous. It's like if you were just a little bit consistent, I could take you seriously. But
exactly.
I can't take you seriously when you're inconsistent and just I'm not a big fan of hypocrisy. So, I mean, if you're for something, stand on it like a rock. At least I can know that you have some integrity. I
Right,
may disagree with you, but it's not a huge deal for me if you're a person who has integrity.
right.
So I always found that funny that people just do that, and then they have all these verses in the Bible that they just totally ignore. But you're a Christian, right?
Yep.
So why don't you? You know, what I'm saying it's like that one. I think Derrick posted this. It might have been you or someone else about. It was a meme about. Yeah, you go ahead and I'll tell you what we'll do. You go ahead and follow the Bible word for word, and we'll see how long it takes for you to get arrested.
Yeah. We call that Christian roulette, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We each follow a Bible commandment, and the last one in prison wins.
Yeah, that was it. The last one in prison wins. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
thought that was the funniest thing ever.
so it's Hebrews 12. It's Hebrews 12, 28 and 29. It says, wherefore we receiving a kingdom which cannot be moved, let us have grace whereby we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear, for our God is a consuming fire. And all the references prior to that of God being fire is you get it right or you're fucked.
Jeez.
But nobody quotes that verse on grace.
You know what's so funny is that I look at some of these traits that are attributed to this God person,
Mm-hmm.
and it none of it makes any sense because as a benevolent being that created the universe, supposedly,
Mm-hmm.
if you truly understand the definition of benevolence,
Right.
if that were actually true, our experience and our existence here on planet Earth would be demonstrably different. As a matter of fact, we wouldn't be able to recognize.
Louisiana rub, garlic pepper, lemon. Yeah.
We wouldn't even be able to recognize that existence compared to now. It would be so radically different if we were in fact created by a benevolent being. It would be radically different.
Mm.
So I find that just for somebody who because I will say I'm not the smartest guy ever. I'm not the dumbest guy either. But for me to figure that out and to see that. So how is that not apparent to everybody else? Where are you at? Where are you at the sun, Ben?
That's a good question, Jimmy. I don't know.
Ben's in hell.
I was gonna say
Apparently.
he's in the depths of hell.
Apparently so. We're using a brand new computer that we got from a friend of ours. He was just giving it away for some reason, but
Yeah, because the camera don't.
I literally just logged in for the first time just to be on the show tonight. So
Is
I
there
don't know why I'm getting this fiery. Like,
Is there a red sticky note over the camera?
Yeah, I can
No.
say there's something sticking on the camera or something.
there shouldn't be. No, there's nothing on there.
Yeah. Well,
Oh wow,
and
the
it's
lens is
it's
messed up.
changing. So
It
I don't
changed when
know,
you did
have
that,
your thumb
Rob.
over the camera.
It's almost like the aperture inside the camera isn't working correctly.
Yeah, maybe so.
That's
Well, anyways,
weird.
good
Because
to
you saw his finger, the shadow.
You did.
Yeah.
Yep. Good to see you tonight, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though you're in hell.
Well, guys, the jig is up.
You have transmuted. You have alchemized. You have.
The jig is up. I am God, and you all are going to suffer. So
Oh shit.
just know it.
Ben is actually a gas giant. See? It's proof
Yeah,
right there.
that's it.
He's a gas giant.
I've transformed. I've transfigured.
That's hilarious. Well, how you doing tonight, Ben?
If you're a gas giant, are you like a giant fart?
I might be. I'm full of hot air, so
I am flatulencio.
They can't see you, buddy, because something's going on with the computer.
Yeah, that camera is seen better days, I think.
Hey, Ben, if you click on your settings, you should be able to change your camera.
That is crazy.
Ben, if you click on your settings on the little gear icon, change your camera.
It's almost like we're in an episode
I'm
of Star
trying to.
Trek and we're talking to another being, another type of being.
That's what it is. Ben is a higher life form.
Yeah, exactly.
From
He's
another
like the wormhole aliens in Deep Space Nine. There you go.
I'm glad you guys realize it now.
dimension.
That's hilarious.
Hey, Broadnax, thanks for joining in, man. You could join in on the conversation. I'm gonna put the.
I'm trying to find this this gear. Because okay.
Yeah, if you click on the gear and you say video, it'll ask you what device,
Yeah,
Right.
which camera you want to use?
which camera you want to use.
It only gives me the option of front camera, which doesn't seem to do anything.
Okay, so here's the thing. You might there might be a little a button at the top of the screen that you slide. It's like a privacy thing.
All right, you're blinking.
You're blinking, man. It's like there's some info.
Hey, there he
It's
is.
a miracle.
And there's
It's
a
a
little
goddamn
one next to it.
miracle.
Hey, Asa, how you doing,
And
buddy?
this is Asa, my 8-year-old.
This is growing up, man. How old is he now?
8.
No
Wow.
way.
Yeah.
No way.
Make
About
me
to
feel
take on the
old.
world.
It's like you and Beth both have such great hair. Your kids just have like fantastic hair, man.
Thank you, Dee.
Wow.
Excited.
So now I'm
This is my-
here.
This is my first time talking to you, Ben. Nice to meet you, buddy.
Ben's out of
Jimmy.
hell.
I love what you're doing on Unreligious.
Hands of
Oh,
God,
thank you. I appreciate it.
Rescue pulled you out of the miry pit.
Yeah. How did you fix that, Ben?
By the
Seriously.
grace of God.
Well, I did what Derrick said. He said there should be a little switch, and apparently it was at the top. I don't know why anybody would close it.
Oh, you had the flap closed on it.
Yeah, that's the
That's
privacy
what it was, apparently.
Yeah.
You're fired.
But it's
You're
funny
fired.
that it would be like a fiery.
When
A
he put his thumb up
fiery,
there, it was
image.
changing.
That's funny. That is hilarious. I like that. That's good. So how you doing tonight, Ben?
I'm good. I'm
Fantastic.
good. I'm full of
Cool.
grace, Jimmy.
Are you full of
Okay.
grace?
So
Nice.
I just
Yay.
I've noticed comments from Blessed Be He, and he or she's been talking about the fire within us and how we're neglecting it and how we don't know what the hell we're talking about. So I'm sure Blessed Be He thinks that this is a sign, that when you tried to get on all that red fiery stuff, that was a sign from God that we are neglecting the fire within.
Are they being serious or facetious?
No, they're
It's
being.
the devil. The devil.
So that's a religious person there?
Oh yeah, Blessed
Oh.
Be He is the name.
Oh wow.
Sorry,
I'm not gonna say no. It's Friday night. I'm gonna be nice. I ain't saying shit.
No, you don't have to be. You don't have to be.
I don't know if you saw that,
Remember,
Derrick.
Jimmy, you're a dick for good.
I know that, but
Talking about
sometimes
religious speak.
No rules Friday.
But here, let me just address that. Like, Blessed Be He. If anybody goes and reads the comments on YouTube or whatever, it's all religious speak. Like, it means absolutely nothing. It's all this like, hallelujah, fire, glory.
Hey, you can show him.
You're neglecting it. He showed you the way. Like, it means nothing.
Mason drew a skull.
Oh man,
Sorry.
that is awesome.
No, that's all right. What is that?
It's a skull.
that's
Oh
cool.
wow,
Dude, I need that on a t-shirt.
that would be a good T-shirt.
There you go. My future graphic artist.
Look at Bishop. He says it was a sign from Satan of the precious fires of hell. Praise Satan.
I'm trying to lure Broadnax on here. Broadnax,
Yeah, I heard that he was interested in
keep
coming
posting this
in.
link.
So
That's
Just click the
hilarious,
link,
dude.
we're putting together quite the heretic roundtable right here. So
Hey, if we ever want to start that, count me in.
Now that would be cool. The Heretic
100%.
Roundtable. We could do that once a
I
month.
love that. The Heretic Roundtable.
We could do it once a month.
I would definitely
Yes.
be a part of that, baby.
Pick a topic
Definitely.
and just kick it around. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
Kind of reminiscent of the Four Horsemen.
Ah,
yeah.
That would be pretty freaking cool. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you know what? Back in my Spec Ops days, they called me Death.
Oh, did they?
Oh,
Oh,
wait.
boy.
Time out.
What?
Blessed Be He put up a post, save the children. So now we know you're a QAnon
Oh boy.
person. You've
Ah.
got QAnon.
Save the
rabbit
children.
hole. So now it all makes sense.
Unless he's talking about save the children from AR-15s and being shot up in school. I don't know what he's talking about.
Hey, if you want to save children, stop sending them to Catholic priests and youth pastors who don't seem to understand that kids are kids.
Instead of
Try to
believing
diddle
this-
them.
instead of believing this rebranded Hitler blood libel mythology that y'all spread to spread hatred towards Jewish people and people of color. So now we get it. Now we understand. Okay, thank you, Blessed Be He, for revealing.
So QAnoners think that JFK Jr. is actually still alive, right?
Yeah, some dude that wears a fedora. Sorry,
Fedora. Yeah.
So
sorry, Derrick. It's not Derrick, but he looks kind of like Derrick. He looks more like Derrick than he does JFK Jr. Just saying.
So they're idiots, is what you're telling me, Aaron.
They are the dude.
Oh my God! I almost spit my drink out.
Hey, Jimmy, don't
If you haven't been down that rabbit
hold back at all.
know the insanity and the anti-intellectualism and the hatred and the racism and the anti-Semitism that QAnon spreads. It is poison.
It's
man.
Squanderers and mockers. Are you
Yeah,
kidding me with this person?
I'm mocking you, Blessed Be He, because you.
Yes, we're mocking you.
Pile of
We
shit.
are absolutely
Oh
And
my
you don't even know the history
God.
of it, and you are an anti-Semist and whatever. I guess the wine's starting to get to me.
Anti-Semitist. Yes, he's an
Thank you.
anti-Semitist.
Dude.
And the way you can always tell though by the way they talk.
People
never-
that believe QAnon check their brains at the door. They
never
dumbest
speak in
people on the
complete
planet.
sentences. They shout out. It's like they always shout
Exactly.
out phrases
Exactly.
and stuff. And it's like, dude, form a complete sentence and tell me what you actually think.
Hey, I don't think you guys are love and light enough. You need to settle down.
Oh my God.
That
Okay.
makes all the sense in the world. Thank you for the Save the Children. Thank you for that. Thank you. Yes, you
I'm
are.
not-
If you believe QAnon, you are anti-Semitic.
Yep, you absolutely are.
Absolutely anti-Semitic. And you don't even know it. You're so stupid you don't even know it. All right, let's just
He's
move on.
so
All right,
stupid.
give it enough airtime for that. Sorry.
Oh,
hey,
Lord.
Jamal Broadnax is here.
Oh boy.
Oh
Praise
shit!
Satan.
What's up,
I
Jamal?
don't know what's the symbol. I don't even know what it really is.
No,
I
it's
don't know
like
what it
this,
is.
man.
Oh, is it
What
like
is
this?
it? Like this?
Yeah.
Hell, I can't see. I don't know what I'm doing.
They say
Nah, dude, that just means you like rock and roll.
Oh, is that what that is?
White
Texas
people
hook 'em
music.
horns. Hook 'em horns.
The gates of hell have officially been opened now.
That is hilarious.
Praise
Yeah,
Satan.
and
Oh my
listen,
goodness.
hell is in full effect now that Jamal Broadnax is here.
Yeah, show him.
Uh-oh. Oh, another
Oh my
one.
God.
Yeah,
Oh, that's my daddy.
Asa,
That's
I
my
need
daddy.
to work
is
on
a
a
portent
t-shirt.
of the apocalypse. So watch out.
Man, your kid can draw better than me, I'll tell you that.
Drawing pictures of my dad.
Oh shit. He said his dad. Wow.
What's going on
we
here
need to get
tonight?
Ace's work on t-shirts. Because I will surely sport it. Like today, I'm wearing this. It says, "Nope, not today.
Not
like
today. Huh?
Not today, Satan.
Not
Not
today."
today, Satan. Even though you don't exist.
You guys need to stop blaspheming my father.
That's hilarious, bro.
Your imaginary sky daddy.
No, he's talking about
Sky
Lucifer
Devil.
Rising.
He's the sky devil. Thank you very much.
His stalagmite daddy.
There you go.
Hey, just remember the Almighty, he created everything, but he's jealous. I don't know what he's jealous of.
Yeah,
But he's
that's
jealous.
a good question, Jimmy.
He created everything, but the motherfucker's jealous. I don't make any goddamn sense to me. What are you jealous of, son? You made everything. That don't make any damn sense.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. It just proves that fallible people wrote this goddamn book. That's all it means. It's if you're a thinking individual, all jokes aside, when you look at all of the editorial mistakes that are in these books that flow throughout this supposedly religious scripture or whatever, you can tell that they were written by people who had no editing skills and who didn't know how things actually worked. Because even at the very beginning of the Bible, there's a contradiction on the days, what he did on the days.
Right. Yeah, there's two creators.
Like, how can you have this happen when we don't even have a sun yet? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So it didn't make any sense from the beginning. It's obviously just a bunch of gobbledygook that people took seriously. Now, if they took it like it's poetic and it's just something to be revered as a piece of literary work that's just strictly poetic, but taken seriously, that's one thing. But when you model your life after something that's so fallibly fucked up, that's why everything is so messed up right now, because people believe that nonsense.
Well, I think we might be too rough on the originators of these scriptures, because they probably didn't write these with the mindset that 2,000 years later people are going to read this shit, or 4,000 years later people are going to read this shit.
You're probably right.
I
You're
really
probably
think
right.
they were just trying to figure out their own way,
Yep.
and it became
Probably.
this systematized structure that just became way too much for itself.
Well, the powers that be used religion as a tool to control people who weren't in the know.
Yep.
Because you have to remember, back then, there were only so many people that knew how to read.
Yeah.
There were only so many people that had any kind of education whatsoever. So it was really easy to manipulate the populace, because the populace wasn't as educated as it is now.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right, Jimmy. And I'm sorry, I'm blessed be he, because I don't want to give him any more.
Oh, were you laughing at him?
I don't want to give him any more airtime, but he actually has. He actually has the
I just put
audacity
something
to-
he posted on.
No,
Because
I'm-
the devil we shall return.
I'm
Bible
reading his shit,
contains-
dude. He's ridiculous.
The Bible contains the essence of his words. Don't knock it because you don't understand it. This coming from someone
That's
who
so
believes
fucking
in the
bullshit.
QAnon theories.
Let me throw something out here, right? Because
God.
3 of the 5 people on here, well, actually 4 out of the 5 people on here have some theological experience, right?
Yep. I was a Christian for the first half of my life.
Aaron has a theological degree. Ben has a theological degree.
Yep.
Broadnax has a theological degree. I don't have a theological degree, but my work is cited as required reading in 5 Bible schools and seminaries. So
Wow.
Nice.
I'm not somebody that doesn't know what the fuck I'm talking about, blessed be he.
Well, see, that's the thing. These people come on and they say things about people and they have no information. So
Exactly.
they look ridiculous and they say these things and they think they're getting a gotcha, but you sound like a freaking
Oh
idiot.
yeah, they owned us. He owned us tonight. I owned him.
Freaking idiot. It's
Derrick
so funny.
Day presents a theology.
All right, let's let that guy go. Let's just move on. Sorry, that's my bad. My bad.
It's so funny
Oh.
though. We're a den of thieves, by the way.
I just realized what y'all
What'd
talking
you guys
about. I
steal?
just figured out the
What
comedy.
are you doing,
Yeah.
son of Satan?
Well,
Man, you a trip. Jamal's
you know,
a trip.
I was too busy saving people from Sky Daddy.
Oh,
Oh
Lord.
boy,
That's hilarious.
you started a
I
revolution.
got him.
Let me say something here about Broadnecks, right? Because
God,
because
yep.
Broadnecks and I basically come from the same family tree
Yes.
in terms of our ecumenical lineage,
Yes.
Okay.
right? So we kind of come from the same. We're not from the same tree, but we come from the same. We're branches
What's up,
of the
buddy?
same
Absolutely.
And here's the thing, right?
I don't know.
Let me say this, right? That I've watched Aaron for about 5 years, for Ben about 5 years, Broadnecks about 5 years. So I've seen the transformation
Yes.
in each one of these guys, right? I've seen where you've gone from, being on fire for Jesus, quote unquote, right?
Absolutely.
To something where okay, there are things that I don't understand, and I'm applying some logic and reason to this, and now this is the outcome of what I think or what I believe, right? And so Jimmy, you're the only one in this that, like, these guys, Ben, Broadneck, Aaron, I've known these guys for a long time, and I've watched their transformation, right? And here's what I'm going to say about this, right? Is that each one of these guys, Jimmy, is that each one of these guys, they have gone through the depth of understanding of Scripture, the explication and unpacking of Scripture, and coming out with something that is based in logic and reason. All of these gentlemen, I've watched all of them to come forth from the so watch this. Blessed be he who is talking about, do you deny the fire inside of you? Right? Here's the thing, right?
That
All
was
of them,
gas.
each one of us has had this fire, this quote unquote fire, that we have preached this. Let me tell you something. Blessed be
Pardon.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. He said gas. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Blessed be he.
Well, he's
right?
coming in the clouds.
Because here's the thing, right?
Fart cloud.
Ben and I, my church, my high water mark of my church was 100 people, right?
Right.
Aaron has had like 2,000. Broadnecks has had like about 2,000.
No,
Damn.
200. I had about 200.
200. I've seen your videos, so I said, okay, that's a big number. But okay, so 200. But here's my point, is that these are people that have preached to multitudes, right? And here's and another thing, Aaron and I have preached itinerantly to multitudes, to thousands of people. Thousands. I'm not talking about hundreds. Listen,
Right.
I preached in a church in a revival in Hayward, California, where there were 4,000 people in the audience.
Damn.
Yep.
I preached in Nigeria, where there were 7,000 people in the audience.
Yeah, Nigerians are notoriously Christian, but yeah.
No, I'm just saying, I'm speaking to blessed be he. You're not talking to people who are fucking amateurs.
Come on,
Right.
no novice. There are
Yeah,
no
no novices
We're
here.
not
Well,
novices
let
here.
me say this.
And then Ben is a guy that actually has a fucking theological degree.
Yes.
Master's degree.
Two of them.
Master's degree.
Not to brag or anything, but
But yeah, I mean, preach to thousands and preach to 10. Like, it didn't matter to me. Like,
Right.
that's how sold out I was, right? Like, if you
Absolutely.
invited me and you had a home group of 10 people, I'd
No,
go.
hey Aaron,
You
you were invited to preach in Poland, invited to preach in Ukraine, invited to preach in Kenya, invited to preach in Uganda. I mean, Uganda and Nigeria. You
Russia,
preached all over the place.
Europe. Yeah.
well, I have to say
Continents.
that in all my time speaking spiritually, I feel more confident in my time of ex-evangelism than I do in my evangelism. Like I've learned more outside of school in my 2 degrees than like what I'm learning now on a daily basis.
Right.
Mhm.
Feeling real downloads. And that's me. That's whatever force is guiding me, but it has nothing to do with like a legalist system or anything like that.
Mhm.
It's no closing doors to certain people or certain
Right.
ideas.
Right. We've been
The more
talking.
I've opened up, the more
here's
I've asked questions and let myself be who I am, the more it just comes freely.
Mm.
Right. That's good, Ben. And here's the thing.
Yes.
We just spent an hour and a half talking about inclusion, talking about love, talking about
Yes.
improving society, talking about owning your shit and becoming a better person.
Yeah.
And this is what we get.
Wow.
It's
I,
crazy.
Wow.
It's crazy.
I'm sorry. I find this
Hold
almost
on for a second. I'm gonna pick on Bishop Jamal Broadnax for a minute, right?
Hey,
Yes,
let's
sir.
be formal. He's the
Grace.
son of Satan, so
Yes,
Thank
son of
you.
Satan.
Get it right. Thank you.
The Episcopos of hell.
The Episcopal,
Thank
Episcopos
you.
of hell. So Bishop,
Yes, sir.
your take on grace.
My take on what?
Your take on grace. I'm really interested to hear what your take on grace is.
It's bullshit. That's what it is.
Not the-
Amen, brother.
Bullshit. You know.
it's
he
some
just went
manipulative
in.
bullshit.
Um.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
It's that's where I last was. That's the last place that I sat before walking away from Christianity. That's exactly where I was at that place of grace and love and the God is love and the grace message. That was my message. But as I continued to, and see, here's the thing, I wasn't like some people think that we walk. Well, I'll speak for me. Some people think that I walked away from Christianity so that I can live a riotous life and do whatever I wanted to do. No, I had no intention to walk away from Christianity. That was not my intent.
Right.
Like I said, I landed at the grace message, but I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to study more. I wanted to know more about this God that I was so in love with and this Jesus character that I was so in love with. You
Right.
see. And
Right.
it was that deeper dive
Right.
that brought me to the conclusion that even the grace message was nonsensical.
Yeah. The deeper you move toward it, the more you move against it because you start to understand that it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You put this
Because
effort in, you try so damn hard, and then the irony is that you come out further away from it.
Yeah, because grace makes no sense. If we're saying that grace covers all, or I don't, how the message goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then you still have this place called hell. So it just
Right.
it just doesn't make sense.
Here's the thing, right? It's like we talk about grace, but mercy and justice, or not even. Let's skip mercy. Let's just jump back all the way back to
To
justice, right?
justice.
Because that's what it is. It's like we don't. The grace movement doesn't believe in grace.
It does not. It does not. You know, I think the grace message is just a way to temporarily close your eyes to to the cruelty that's enclosed within the pages of the Bible.
Damn.
I'm looking at this
Damn.
comment. I'm looking at this comment by Blessed Be He. Darwin was a racist, and you worship him.
No, he said we believe in him. Yeah, I believe it's a real
Believe in
person.
him, same shit.
Right.
It's this idea.
He
It's like nobody's worshiping Darwin.
Hold on a second.
No.
Hold on a second. This really bothers me when Christians do this shit.
Come on, Jimmy.
What bothers me is the fact that we're talking about whether the existence of God is real or not, and until it's proven that he is real, it's not. That has nothing at all to do with human evolution. Period.
No.
So I really get annoyed when people bring up Darwin as if I give a shit.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about whether this Christian religion is real or not, and it's not. It's garbage. It always has been garbage. It always will be garbage. Bringing up Darwin is not solidifying your point of being a Christian. You sound like a fucking idiot. I'm sorry. I have to.
Yeah,
be a
we
dick.
don't-
I have to be a dick for good right now, but you're a fucking idiot, Bless.
We don't worship
mean
at
dick
the
for good.
we don't worship at the altar of Darwin. So
Jesus,
No,
that shit gets on my
no.
goddamn nerves.
Where did
man.
that
That's
even
not
come
accurate.
from?
I don't know, but he's a
It's
freaking
a bunch of
weirdo.
assumptions. It's just,
It has nothing to do with anything.
it's Christian.
but you know what? I had a thought.
Oh, wow.
I just had a download. I just had a thought. They use that as a projection because they know their God is not that big. So they just compare their God to whatever ideas we might grab from.
Yeah.
Right.
Their God is just another person in their mind. It's not the supreme being
yeah.
of the universe
No, they're you know.
that
Let
they
me
want
tell you
to
something.
agree to.
He's
They're-
jealous.
basically their
What
deity
in
is
the
their
world?
deity is a champion in a big dick contest.
I don't know
Right.
what Blessed Be is even talking about. This dude is
Blessed be he doesn't know
Oh,
what
something's
blessed.
wrong with him.
Blessed be he
You
is a
tried to
woman.
find the Jesus
Yeah,
coming
maybe.
in the clouds.
Maybe. Wait,
That
let's
was your
Oh yeah,
mistake.
maybe it could be a gay person. You're true. Yeah, that's right. But I'm going to assume that it's a female because you said hubby.
Hubby
Dude,
is home.
I'm
Either
just-
that or
I'm upset
hey,
to
they could be LGBTQ.
It could be, but I'm going to assume that's a woman.
No,
If I'm
I'm
wrong,
just
I'm
gonna
wrong. I
say
don't have a
I'm
problem
so
with it.
glad your hubby is home.
Yeah, exactly. Bye. Bye, Felicia.
Yep.
Bye.
Get some dick. No, I'm sorry.
Or something.
Yeah.
I'm
All
sorry.
right,
Get
on that
dick.
note, okay, wait, time out. I want to be a part of this so badly, but I have a birthday to celebrate with my son who's
Oh.
13.
Hey, happy birthday to your 16. What did you say? 16?
13.
Your
So he's a
13-year-old
teenager
son.
now, teenager
Happy
now.
birthday, 13-year-old.
Is that Elijah?
Elijah, yep.
Is he
Happy
there?
birthday, Elijah.
He's upstairs, but we're
Oh, he's
gonna
upstairs.
do
Okay.
cake and stuff. So I'm gonna have to bail. I hate to do it, but I love you guys. You're awesome.
Love you too, man.
Love you too, man.
You have a
People.
great
I love
weekend,
you too,
Aaron.
man.
And Aaron, I'll do my best to check you out on Sunday.
Hey, celebrate your kid,
I want
man.
to take you out more on Thursday. I've just life's been crazy, man. So
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah.
So,
Hey,
Whenever I
Aaron,
get a chance to catch
call me
any of
when
these
you
shows,
can.
I do it. So,
thanks, Jimmy. I really appreciate
All
it.
right.
yep. No problem.
Enjoy your day, brother.
Yep.
All right,
Yes,
later.
sir.
Love you guys. All of you.
Hey,
Love you
Yeah,
warm as
man.
well. Love you as well.
All right.
All right.
All right. So then there were 4. I'm
Yeah,
so glad I
we-
decided to
we-
get on. I
this is
wasn't
going
even
as
planning
long
on
as you
watching
guys
this
are
today.
free.
Huh?
I said we can keep this going as long as you guys are free.
I am free. But the girls are in St. Joe right now shopping, so I'm good. It's just me down here in my dungeon, so we're good to
All
go.
right.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever met you before. Have I, Jamal?
I don't believe so.
Well,
It
anyway,
doesn't
nice to
sound-
meet you, brother.
I hope you guys
Good to
don't suffer from motion sickness. I gotta
Jimmy.
get food. So
No, I'm good.
Jimmy, you need to have Jamal as a guest on your show.
You know me, I like interviewing people. That's fun.
I would be happy to. Yeah, sure.
We'll set that up. As a matter of fact, we'll exchange information later on after the
Okay.
show,
And then
we'll talk about it.
Ben.
Oh,
so
I already knew I was going to get Ben on the show.
you need
before he
to
even knew
have
it.
Jimmy on you and Daryl's show.
Oh,
that's
yeah, that would
right.
be awesome.
Yeah, when we
That
get
would
that
be
going,
awesome.
that's been my fault. Like
I
I've
would
had
love
a lot
to be on your show.
I've had a lot going on, but me and Daryl will be getting something going again soon.
Yeah, I would love to be on you guys' show.
Awesome.
That would be awesome as hell. Yeah, baby. So
We'd
can
love
talk
to have
about-
you, Jimmy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to talk about the grace of God and how Jesus is coming in the clouds.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that shit just cracks me up.
Hey, listen, my thing is that I've watched. Listen, I'm 61 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and I've watched people talk about Jesus coming
Yeah.
all of my life, right? And so 61 years, this hasn't happened.
It's not going.
It's not going to.
Right.
Dude is
so-
obviously wearing a condom because if he's
Wait.
coming, we're not seeing any
Oh my
evidence of
God.
it.
I almost fell over in my seat, Jimmy. God damn.
I'm just saying, bro. I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying?
There's a meme it's a billboard. Jesus says, "I am coming,"
Oh, look
I
at
am
the Christ-like
coming, right?
blessed be.
and I'm
he.
like, Jesus is the
So
original
Christ-like.
fucking edge lord.
Edge Lord, exactly.
And he needs some Viagra too because he comes quickly.
Oh.
Hey, Jamal, for some reason you look like you're in the heavens. Like, what's going on with your picture, man?
What's up?
I'm gonna be that guy who's projecting his own image, his own issues earlier. What's going on with your image, man?
My image?
Can't really
I
see
don't
you.
know.
We can't see you.
You can't see me?
I can see him.
I can see
I mean,
it.
he's faded.
Really?
Oh, wait a
He looks
minute. It
fine
might
to
be
me.
the light in my room.
Maybe
it
it's
might
my
be the light.
computer. I don't know.
Yeah, it was because you didn't even know how to move the
No.
flap on your computer,
Flip
Ben.
your
He got
camera
you. You
We're
missed it earlier.
squanderers, guys.
Yeah. What the hell does he mean by that?
Nah, we're squandering something.
Here's the funny thing about that, right? By squanderers, right? What are we squandering?
His grace. That's what we're squandering.
Oh, yeah. Okay, then.
Well, you guys better believe in God or you're going to fail versus not believing in God or you might fail. Like this Pascal's wager shit.
Pascal's wager, yeah.
Anytime. Oh, go ahead, Derrick.
No, here's the thing. Pascal's wager is bullshit,
Yeah,
right?
because there's like 10,000 gods or more.
Because I mean,
Which one do you pick?
Well, not only that, but out of the 10,000 gods, which interpretation of the Christian God do you pick?
Right.
Absolutely.
And that whole Pascal's wager, it falls flat.
Not only with religion, with any concept, if the concept is believe or, throw it out the window. It's bullshit. It shouldn't be an or. It should be believe because of evidence that's demonstrable, tangible, and repeatable. If it's anything other than that, it's bullshit.
Absolutely.
That's what I'll
bullshit.
say. Is it tangible, measurable, and repeatable?
And if it's not,
it's
bullshit.
It's pop philosophy.
Yeah, and they say you can't test it because God is God. He is beyond comprehension. So.
Oh, Jamel, you almost made me spit out my drink again.
Sorry.
Hey, Jamal.
Yes.
Somebody asked me one time. They said, "So what will you do if the God of the Bible was actually real?" I said, "You want to know what I would actually do if I had to talk to him? The first thing I would ask him, what the fuck are you doing, dude?" That's the first thing I would say. And he looked at me, he's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm already dead. I don't give a fuck if this dude's mad at me or not. This is weird. This doesn't make any sense.
It
He
does
made
not.
me, and he knows how my brain works. So why would he be even surprised that I would say that? He would already know that I'm going to say that.
Yep.
Let me share a story with you
So
guys,
silly.
right? Last weekend, I spent half of my weekend in St. Louis with my son and my grandson.
Mhm.
And the reason why I spent that time with them is because my grandson had a seizure on Friday.
Oh,
And
damn.
then he had
You
another
okay?
one on Saturday after I arrived. So we
Mm.
took him to Children's Hospital, right?
Mm.
Now watch this. We're in triage. My grandson is in a room in Children's Hospital. Meanwhile, I'm sitting out here in the lobby, and there is a woman with her daughter who obviously has cancer.
Oh, wow.
And she's throwing up with a cadence of every 5 to 10 minutes.
Poor
Now,
baby.
here's the thing, that as much as I love my grandson, if I had God powers for 5 minutes, I would have healed that child with cancer
Mhm.
first,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
That's bold, man.
But the God who can cure anything
Wow.
is doing nothing.
Wow.
Well, as a matter of fact, I would take it a step further, Derrick. If I was God, I would just cure every illness like that. Be done
No,
with it.
I would.
If I was God, I
Hey,
never
Jimmy,
would have created illness.
here's the thing.
Fuck yeah.
I
Go
would
Brad Mags.
absolutely cure everything. But I'm saying if I only had God powers for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
I would have healed this baby that has cancer, because my grandson who has a seizure,
Right.
they're going to figure this out.
Right.
Yeah.
So you do the greatest good for
You
the
do
time
the
that you
greatest
have.
good.
Yeah.
So
I feel you.
therefore, I am more moral than any God.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's either impotent. He's either
Absolutely.
impotent or he doesn't exist, and I'm going to go with the second option.
Yep.
I
I'm with
think
you.
he's just a man-made. He's a man-made construct that people have glommed onto for so long. It's like I don't know if I was talking to you or who I was talking about, but the line of deceivers is so long
Mm.
that now it's become a truth because we've been lying to each other for so long
Yeah.
that it's so ingrained in us that it's so hard to let go.
Absolutely.
Like if you ever remember, like I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this, but in the beginning of my deconstruction and my conversion from being a Christian to being atheist, I was always worried about what's going to happen to me if, you know what I'm saying, me doing this. There's always that fear because you were taught when you were a little kid that this guy was real, and now that you're waking up from that, you're worried about, am I actually waking up, or am I going down the wrong road here, or what am I doing? I'm kind of worried. Like it's almost like that thing where you're worried about if you actually step on the crack, are you actually going to get struck by lightning? And you know that, which is not going to happen, but that psychological trick has been played on you at such a young age that when it still affects you when you're older and you know better, but because it's been something that's been a part of you for so long, it's hard to let go of.
It's ingrained at a subconscious level.
Exactly. And so you have to consciously work at it every day to let go of that. Now, I used to be scared, be like, oh, I used to sit there and worry about what happened when I'm dying. I don't worry about that now. You know why? It's like Jim Jeffries says, I'm not even going to know I'm dead. You know why? Because I'll be fucking dead. It doesn't make a difference. Like, I don't want to die prematurely. And I know, depending on how you die, the experience can be very painful and unpleasant. But after you die, you're not going to know you're dead because you'll be dead. It's kind of like before you were born. You didn't exist then. You feel no feelings about that at all. You're not going to feel it's just the same thing in reverse. And people just can't comprehend that. So they make up all these stories to pacify themselves. So they feel better about their life and they feel better about the possibility of dying. So they don't scare the shit out of themselves because they're too weak to understand that it is what it is and to take reality for what it is and quit making up ghost stories to make yourself feel better. To me, that's weak.
Well, Well,
That's
I will
super
say
weak.
this. I will say this. Any God who wants you to kiss his ass for eternity is not worth a damn anyway.
No, screw him.
That's
No.
that's insecurity on the map right there.
Listen,
So,
that's the first four of the 10 Commandments.
Kiss his ass.
How to kiss God's ass.
Kiss my ass.
Pretty much.
fuck the four
Well,
commandments.
or you know what? You know what? Those first few commandments are really don't kiss any other god's ass
Yeah.
Exactly.
But see, I never
because he's a
understood
jealous
that.
God.
Well, Yahweh is actually the son of El,
Yes.
which is the son of some other god. So it doesn't matter. Like there's always
Whoa.
another version.
You lost me on that one. Yahweh is the son of a what?
Yeah, Yahweh is the son of El, apparently. So
All of these gods.
I've never
he's
heard
not the
this.
boss of the
Yep.
town.
So
that's
the God
absolute
that
truth.
the God of the Bible is actually the son of another God?
Yep.
Yep.
That's
How come I've
exactly
never
Well,
heard this before?
Well, there's so many gods mentioned in the Bible. So when
Yeah.
you say the God of the Bible, we got to figure out, well, which God are we talking about?
Because
I'm
you got to
told-
think. You got to
And
think
watch
that
this, right?
you got to think that.
The God of the Bible says no other gods.
Right.
Yeah,
So that means there are other gods.
Right. Well, it even talks about it itself. It talks about in somebody can probably tell me, I can't remember, but where he talks about this council of gods, and he consults with this council.
What?
So yeah, it's in there.
He
It's-
wouldn't say worship no other gods before me, gods,
This is
if there
true.
wasn't more.
Yeah.
And like it's based off of ancient Sumerian
Absolutely.
ideas, because that was the first civilization. And they had
That's where the
gods.
root.
But here's
They had
the
their own
Trace the
gods
word
to your point,
Elohim
before
back.
Yahweh.
all biblical the God of the Bible is based on the Sumerian gods.
Yes. Yes.
Just like the
If
flood
you-
of Noah was the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Certainly.
That I did know. Yeah.
So
Gilgamesh
if
was
you
there.
trace, well, this is one of the, I don't want to, well, I guess I have to call it a theory, but if you trace the, thank you, Aaron, Psalm 82, that's the count about the council of gods.
Okay,
Psalm
cool.
82.
Cool.
But if you trace this word Elohim, which is the word, one of the first words in the Old Testament used to describe God in our English Bible, okay, King James Bible, this word Elohim, the Hebrew word, according to I won't give all the names, but anyway, what's his name? Billy Carson and Paul Wallace and this other guy. Anyway, I can't remember their names, but they trace back this word Elohim. And anyway, this word Elohim goes back, as Derrick and Ben were talking about, at its root, it goes back to the Sumerian writings. And in these ancient writings, they have a version of this word Elohim, but it's in there, it's talking about these beings that came from the sky. And it was multiple beings that came from the sky. Okay. Yeah. So that's, the word Elohim, it's a plural. Even theology professors and even in Christian theology, they'll tell you that Elohim is a plural word.
Yep.
Yeah, it says right here that Elohim is a grammatical plural noun for gods
There you
or
go.
deities or various other words in biblical Hebrew.
There you go.
Interesting. I never knew about Elohim. So
Yeah. The Bible is polytheistic. It's not monotheistic.
Nope. It's not monotheistic.
It's a plagiarist too.
It
Yeah.
is.
Very plagiarist.
Well, Ben, okay, we can say it's plagiarism. We can say that.
We can.
We can say, but listen to another perspective also. Or we can say they were doing what people do. People take stories, okay, that have been passed down, and they
run with them.
They turn them into their own stories.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not hating Broadnecks. I'm not
I
hating.
know you're not. I call
I'm
it
just
that as
saying.
well. I call it that as well. But at the end of the day, it's what we all do.
Right. That's true.
It's what all good writers do anyway. You know,
Right.
everything is based on something.
Oh yeah. If anybody talk about their 100% original when they're doing any kind of thing, you're full of shit. You're not.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the other thing too, is that we don't hold any patent on anything.
Right.
I mean,
Wow.
basically, what we know is something that we've been taught.
That's right.
In the distance.
That's all we know.
Yep. That's all we know is what we've been taught.
Yep.
That's true. Wow. I'm so glad I got onto this evening. I'm learning
Me
some shit
too.
tonight.
I'm glad I made it.
I'm
I
learning some
wasn't
shit
sure what
tonight.
happened, but
Yeah, I'm glad that you
Right.
joined in a bit, Jimmy.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. I see Aaron added some detail to that scripture. That's right. It talks about God
He said
standing.
it's that bitter hell 9000.
I saw that.
I don't get the reference, but
That's
dig
from
it.
I think that's from the movie with the space, the movie.
Is
Billy,
that 2001?
yeah, yeah, it's
All right,
the
all right, yeah.
2001 A Space Odyssey. Yeah, that's what that's from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in order to close the loop on 2001, you
God.
have to watch 2010.
Say that again.
You have to watch 2010 to close the loop on 2001.
Yeah, you do, and I haven't watched 2010 yet. I don't know why. I just haven't.
It's funny. Like I had an assignment with my sons that we had to watch 2010, and they watched this and they were like, "Oh my God, Dad, that's the greatest movie ever."
Really?
Yeah.
Is that a movie? I don't know that one.
Yeah. 2010.
2010.
2010.
Because I know the Mayans were thinking 2012 would be
No,
the end.
watch 2010, the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have
Yeah,
to check it out.
2012. Yeah, there was a movie called 2012, which was that they made that disaster movie based on that Mayan thing that you were just talking about, Ben.
2012 is one thing, but 2010 is closing the loop of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Which is a classic science fiction movie.
It is a
2001
classic.
Yeah.
But if you
I-
watch 2010, it closes the loop on 2010
Yeah.
on 2001 rather.
Right. It's been so long since I've seen 2001, though. I probably need to watch that
Already
again.
brushed
Yeah,
his
you
teeth.
need to watch it.
He's all set.
Yeah. I'll tell you something funny that just popped up on my
9:30.
phone as a notification.
What's
Something, I
that?
guess it's a YouTube video or something, but it said Jesus was a space alien. I thought that was kind of
Yeah,
You know what? Listen, there is some substance to that.
indeed.
Really? I thought he was a myth.
Well,
right.
here's the thing, right? I'm more inclined toward the Jesus as myth,
Right.
right? But Jesus as a space alien, actually, it works for me on a number of different levels.
It aligns with the story anyway.
Well, there are schools of thought that think that Melchizedek was an alien because
Really?
he didn't have any generations before him. He just showed up out of nowhere.
Dude, that's powerful. And that actually works on a lot of different levels.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that about Melchizedek.
Yep.
Interesting.
Melchizedek had no lineage,
Good point.
but he is the priesthood from which Jesus derives his ministry.
Yep.
Huh.
And Jesus, and if you go by Mark, if you go by the Gospel of Mark, which is apparently the first gospel,
Yeah.
he just showed up out of nowhere too. There wasn't a birth story, no nativity
Good
scene, nothing
point.
like that. He just came out of nowhere. He just showed up in town, and people were like,
Good
"Oh,
point.
this guy."
Yep.
And these other writers needed to add some validity to it to make it more believable. So Matthew and Luke decided to add a birth story.
Huh.
Well, here's the interesting thing about the Gospel of Mark is that is the oldest
Yep.
gospel, and that every gospel thereafter is a copy of the Gospel of Mark.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Yep, it's a true story.
That's why there's not a resurrection story either. At least like with the original documents, they added stuff after the fact that talked about him resurrecting.
Yeah, the oldest manuscripts don't include it.
Yeah.
Yep. Well,
They
of course,
stop with the women going to the tomb and running away afraid and telling
Yeah,
no.
they were afraid, and that was the end.
You know, isn't it funny though how you have that verse saying that they were afraid and they ran and told no man, and then later on we see it added saying, and they told these men and these men.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought they told no man. Wait a minute.
The original documents, which are still talked about today,
Yep.
do not give you a virgin birth story, and they also do not give you a reanimation story. So, what do you do with that?
It's very interesting, I tell you that. But what's even more interesting when you point these facts out to most Christians, I'm not going to say all, when you point these facts out to most Christians, their response is, you can't make me doubt him. I still believe God. I believe in Jesus and I believe in the resurrection. It doesn't matter what you say. They still believe.
And you know what? When they pass away and there's nothing after that, okay. It doesn't hurt them. It doesn't harm them. And it's the same for us who are skeptical of it. Nothing's going to happen afterwards.
Yeah.
Or there's something great that happens afterwards. But I don't think we're going to be judged by our theology one way or the other. So
Yeah.
Sorry about that. My
food
significant
just
other
showed
called.
up. So
Yeah, but that was Eva. She just called about food. She wanted me to tell her what I wanted. So sorry about that.
Did you tell her you wanted the body and blood of Jesus?
I should have. That would have been hilarious. Because you probably don't know this, Jamal, but my girlfriend is Catholic.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
Yeah, she is. But she's a sweetheart. Our religion,
listen,
our relationship isn't based on religion, so we're good with that.
See, that may be a place where I need some assistance right there. We may need to talk about this because
Why?
I've kind of began this relationship with
Mm-hmm.
this friendship, let me say that's headed in the direction of a relationship with this young lady. And it just happened so fast, you know.
Right.
But she is not only a Christian,
Uh-oh.
but she's moving. Okay, I'm giving too much information. Wait a minute. Then somebody might figure out who it is. So let me stop. She's a Christian, and I'll say this much: she's a Christian, and she's in ministry. So
wow.
Really?
I'm having a lot of thoughts about it. You know, I talked to her about it, and I told her, I said, well, you know where I stand. She said, I do. And she said, I know that you're not gonna change. And she said, and I'm not gonna change. I expressed to her, I will respect where you stand. I'll even support you if you're ministering somewhere. I'll go sit in the back. You know,
Really?
I'll be there. I'll go support you. But can you do the same? And she said she could. You know.
Oh, really?
That's what she said. She said she has no issue with where I stand, but I don't know.
Well, here's just to give you some insight. We've been together going on 9 years, and we've never had an argument about religion. And the reason why is because she knew I was an atheist before we started dating. I knew she was Catholic before we started dating. I don't have a problem with people being religious as long as they're not dicks about it. I can't tell you how to reconcile your existence in the universe with yourself. You need to do that yourself. If you need to believe in nonsense, so be it. But as long as you're being a nice person while you're believing in nonsense,
Right.
I'm not the judge of that. I'm not
Amen.
you know what I'm saying? So I understood that, and she understands that I'm a staunch atheist. As a matter of fact, I'm an anti-theist, to be honest with you. Okay. But I'm not an anti-theist to the point where I forget that people have their own autonomy and they make their own decisions about their lives. So as long as she and I continue to respect each other as individuals, because I think that's the most important thing, then what she does on her Sunday mornings without me, I could care less.
Right.
So that's how we get along, because I let her do her thing.
House?
Yeah, we sleep in the same bed next to each other naked. You know what I'm saying? But we've been living together for 8 years, and there's no issues whatsoever, because our relationship is based. And here's another thing you have to also remember too. She's your average Catholic. When she goes to church on Sunday, she's super Catholic. When she's sitting next to me at the thing, she's saying fucking shit and damn and hell, just like everybody else.
And this girl does.
She is a human being, and she's, you know what I'm saying?
She's a Pentecostal, but she does the same.
Exactly.
So if I could,
she loves her jacket. Hold 1 second. She loves her Jack and Coke, and she loves to tell me that I'm ridiculous and I need to shut the fuck up because I'm stupid. And jokingly, of course, but she's a regular, sociable human being who just happens to be raised Catholic and still goes to church on Sunday. That's all that is. So.
Would you say,
so the moral?
I gotta throw this in here. My Wingstop just arrived.
Oh shit!
I gotta run.
Okay, so let me just throw this in just to follow up, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Don't hate those who substantiate.
There you go. Hey, thanks for having me on, my man.
We appreciate it.
Love you, Derrick.
Hey, listen,
Hey, Jimmy.
Jamal, you have to be a guest on both Ben's show and Jimmy's show.
Sure.
Yeah.
Amen.
We can do that. How do you want to get in touch with me? And Ben, you know how to get in touch with me.
Here's what you do. My Facebook, just look, Jamal. You see my name up there? It's JIMMIELIGON.
You want me to be honest? If I can see it, I heard it, but I can't see it.
Yeah, but okay, write it down then. Yeah, write it down. Here's what I want you to do.
The booze might make it difficult to read.
Right. Write this down. JIMMIE is my first name.
I got it. JIMMIE. Okay.
Last name is Ligon, LIGON.
I got it. LIGON.
Find me on Facebook, send me a friend request, and then we can talk through Messenger and get everything situated this week or this weekend or whatever.
Now, I still have the title Bishop, so don't get afraid when you see it. Okay.
I ain't afraid of nothing, nigga. Oops, me after the N-word. My bad. That just came out naturally. I'm sorry.
Wait a minute.
Me and Jamel come from the same lineage, right? I was a bishop too, right? But Jamel hangs on to that title.
Mostly to make people mad, piss them off.
Oh, okay, I got you. No, I'm not worried about that, brother. You call yourself whatever you want to. I'm good with that.
But
sorry about the nigga though. That's slipped out.
Jamal is the real deal.
Nigga what?
Nigga what?
Yeah,
he's
straight up nigga what, nigga who, right?
Oh, we get Jigga up in here, get JC up in here. Anyway, I don't want to keep you up from your Wingstop, brother. I just want to thank you for having me on. Nice to talk to you, Ben. And I met you before, but it's the first time we talked face to or like camera to camera. But Ben, I've never talked to Jamal before, so nice to talk to you.
You and Daryl need to have Jimmy on your show.
Absolutely.
You and Daryl need to have Jamal on your show. Y'all need to work this shit out, but it'll be fire no matter how you guys do it.
Yeah, Jimmy, we're gonna do this for sure.
Yeah, we need to turn this into a big enterprise, a big what do they call it?
Yeah.
Empire. We need to put
an
atheist empire.
I know that Derrick and Aaron are working on some sort of like overall structure that's gonna put us all together in like a community of some sort on the internet.
I'm down with it.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Derrick, and to you two brothers too.
Okay.
Hey, everybody have a good night. Guys, thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
I love
In
you
the
guys.
meantime, peace and
Have a good
hair
night.
grease.
Peace.